If you are a mom and a business owner, today's episode is for you. I'm chatting with Suzi Whitford from startamomblog.com. And this conversation is like just sitting down with a good friend over a cup of coffee, which, if you're a mom and a business owner, you probably need that right now. It can be a bit lonely and you can feel like you are struggling through that balance between mom life and business life all alone. We talk in this episode about retiring your husband, about that transition from corporate life to mom life. We talk about the different seasons of life with your business and with kids. And it's just a really great conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. Suzi is a gem full of information. She's worked with Fortune 100 companies like GE and Walt Disney, working on systems. She is a blogger herself and has led over 100,000 students through her courses and programs. You're going to learn a lot today. Let's jump into it. All right, Suzi, I am so excited to chat with you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Abby. It's really an honor to be here with you, and it's always super awesome to chat with you.
I know. We've been friends for a while now. I remember coming to not your current house, but one of your old houses and hanging out with your kids. Our kids got to play together and so fun.
Yeah, since then we've moved 3 more times. So you missed a couple houses in between, but please come down and visit us again.
I will.
Yeah,
I will. I want to come and see the lake house. Oh my goodness. So awesome. So what I want to dive into today, and I'm really excited to chat with you about, is just not just your business story, but your mom story and how those two have, really collided with one another, worked with one another. Because I do feel like, just like my story, your business story and your mom's story are really, really intertwined. And so I just want to talk about that. So if anybody's listening and they're a mom, or you're thinking about starting a business as a mom, or you already are, and there's struggles that you're like, I don't know if anybody else gets this, that's what we're chatting about today. I know it's going to be so good. I want to dive kind of just into your origin story though, right? Like, let's start at the beginning. Why did you start a mom blog?
All right. So way at the beginning, John and I, the whole thing kind of sparked with like being so crazy in love with my husband. So we met in college. We're both industrial engineers. We studied the same stuff. We went on to work for GE Healthcare, for Toyota, and then Walt Disney World for a while. And we've always been together. We've always done projects together, late night working and coding and all that. So then after being career focused for a while, we decided, okay, we're going to settle down, start our family. And I was lucky enough to get a remote position with GE Healthcare. And it lasted about 2 weeks when I had my first baby after maternity care. It was so hard to work remotely, but still corporate, because you still had to be there for your 8-9 hours. So you couldn't really step away, even though it was remote work. I had to have my mom-in-law come watch my 3-month-old baby at the time, and it was just too hard. So after 2 weeks, I had to put in my 2 weeks notice. So it was a really short little stint there of being in that position of like working corporate and being a mom. And then that first year of being a mom and being at home with my baby was 50% amazing. Like, being a mom is fantastic and you have this beautiful little child that you take care of. But then the other 50% is like, what the heck is going on? Like, right? I'm a mom now. I have to take care of this living little person forever. Like, I can't give her to anybody else. Like, she's mine. And I'm like, I used to work and I used to be with my husband and like we used to jive and be a team. And now I'm like here at home alone and he goes out and does awesome stuff. So it was a really hard year. That first year of becoming a mom, there's a lot of ups and downs. So moms out there now, the first year when you're just getting thrown into motherhood, it is tough.
Yes.
It's so tough. So how was it for you when you became
Oh my gosh. I mean, literally, our stories are so similar in the sense that I worked a like corporate remote job at one point too. And it was so different than like work for yourself. I'm like carrying the laptop, but I need to put in a little laundry, but I got to carry the laptop with me in case somebody messages. And I'm like, yeah. And then my first year, it's so crazy. Like the difference between first and second child, my first kid. Now I hadn't started a business at that point. I was like just stay at home momming. Then I started nannying, which I I hated doing. But that first year, I tell people too, I'm like, it's just the adjustment to having another kid in your life, or like another human in your life when it's just been you and your spouse for so long, the adjustment to like taking care of someone and always having someone with you at all times. I'm like, I need to take a shower. Oh, I guess I need to take you in here with me because I can't just leave you alone. Like just all of the things and just such a huge adjustment. And yeah, oh my gosh, I think I cried every single day for the first 6 months because I just didn't know what the crap I was doing. Plus, I think my hormones were all crazy. And then second child, it's like, all right, here we go. And I'm jumping in and like, hey, let's go to the grocery store like 2 days after being in the hospital. And here we go. It was like totally night and day for me, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That first child is just so hard. Like by the time I had my third baby, I was trekking them all to the gym. And I'm like, I have my 2 hours at the YMCA and you guys are going to be here playing your play date. And I put them all in the carrier and here we go and in and out. And I was just doing everything. But like that first child is tough. So with like that sadness that came of like, I lost this part of me that was cool and professional and awesome and out there. And then seeing the stress on John's shoulders of like, now we used to have 2 incomes. Now we have 1 income and another dependent. Right. So not only did our income go down, but our like cost of living went up because now we have a baby and new things we have to buy for this little person. So I could see there was a lot of stress on him. And I come from a background of entrepreneurial people in my family. So my dad started his company when he was 25 and he would actually, I love the story that he tells us. He would sleep in his office because his computer would run so slowly to go through coding and programming. He would have to sleep in his office, click one button, then wait for it to load, like a couple of hours later, and then click another button and wait for it to load.
Oh my gosh.
When he was 25, like that's when he built his little program, and that's what sustained us our entire life.
Wow.
My mom started her own little restaurant when we were little. And then my sister has her own little thing. And my brother has his thing. So we're all pretty much like
an entire family.
Right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, entrepreneurs. That's so cool. I had no idea that was your background.
Yeah. And then like John's background is that way too. But so what prompted me of like, okay, I'm at home with my baby. After about 6-8 months, I started getting the hang of it. I'm like, okay, she's napping. I feel a little bit more comfortable. Things are starting to calm down. Now during this nap time, what can I do to help John? So I would dabble in anything. I traded stocks for a little bit. It was totally unsuccessful. I did direct sales. I tried all kinds of different companies. And then I did little arts and crafts that I would sell. And the whole time I'm like, my dad has a digital product. He has a software that he sells. Okay. And his profit margins are crazy. He just has to sit in front of his computer and code. And then he doesn't ship anything. It's just all digital, right? It's bits and bytes that he sends to people and they give him money. I'm like, man, I need to try something like that too. Because actually painting this little physical peg doll is really going to take forever. So then John suggested, he was listening to podcasts. He's like, why don't you just start blogging? Like it's simple, it's easy. Start with that. It's online and you can do it when the baby sleeps. I'm like, okay. Let me start with that. So I started growing my first little blog. It was all about parenting, obviously, because that was the season I was in. My first couple blog posts was all about just to get my baby to sleep through the night. And that's how I started making my first like couple dollars with affiliate marketing. And that's how it started growing. So that was my little Whitford life blog when we were just starting out.
Now, does that blog still exist?
It did for a very long time. And then what I wrote on it was very personal. So I took it down.
Yeah, I get that.
After a while, I'm like, ooh, I got too many students. They're going to all find this. Okay, I think I'm going to take down this very personal blog. Yeah.
So, but over time, you kind of use that same framework to grow multiple blogs, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that.
So then I had my personal baby parenting blog, and then my neighbors would come to me and we would hang out in the street after John comes home from work. And they're like, you seem a little calmer. You seem a little happier. Like, what's going on? And I would tell them, hey, I started this little website and I made $20. And like, I'm elated because I made something that like our income is now a tiny little bit higher than what it was yesterday. I made something. So I was super proud of myself. And like people would comment on my blogs or my blog posts. And I'm like, wow, somebody read my content. So I was super elated. So I started teaching my neighbors how to start their own little blogs. And they started getting really successful, like super duper successful. So I'm like, man, I should teach more moms how to do this because it boosted my confidence. It boosted their confidence. Not only is it a way for you to like, yes, bring in an income online, but that confidence boost is just, that is like most valuable part of starting the whole blog thing.
Yeah. Okay. So during that season, your blog is taking off, but you're still balancing being a mom, adjusting
Yeah.
to new mom life. Was there any season during that where you felt like those two things were at odds, or
Oh
how
gosh.
did you kind of balance this? Like, I am working and taking care of my kid. Because I know, like, when I was starting a business at the same time as raising my kids,
Yeah.
there's been seasons of like, oh, this feels like a lot, or I feel like I'm giving more attention to one or not the other. In the
Yeah.
very beginning, did you have that tension at all?
Yeah. Yeah. So just first of all, sorry if I'm losing my voice. This is not normally my
Oh, you're
raspy
good.
voice, but as long as you can
It's
still
good. It's very
understand.
sexy, it's
Hi.
sultry.
Hi.
This is Suzi, Study Mom Blog.
Yeah, it's not that type of mom blog. So, yes, there has been times where it was at odds, where I would have to carve out little times to be able to work on my blog. It would be super early in the morning. So John would leave to go to work at 5, and I would wake up with him. I'm like, 5 o'clock, we're starting, we're up. And then around 7 o'clock, the kids would wake up. So I would have that short little time to work. And then any little bits and bobs of time I would get, I would use to work on the business. But it was really hard. What kept all of it in perspective was like the big goal. I'm like, my big goal is initially it was just to go to Target like a boss and be like,
Yeah.
I have my own money. But then the bigger goal was like to get John home because I started missing him. And I'm like, okay, I want to bring daddy home so that the kids really have a really awesome relationship with both of us and not just the mom and they see dad on the weekends or after work.
Yeah.
So there was sacrifice, but I try to take away that time from my own personal time. So I know we all need to have our own time and self-care and all that, but there are some sacrifices. So we gave up watching TV at night, which is such a nice luxury. Like we try to do it over the weekends now. I'm like, oh, I just can sit here and do nothing. It's so nice. But when you're hustling and you're working on your little thing, you're just going to have to carve some time away. And
Yeah.
some seasons I had more, like the babies would sleep and you're like, oh my gosh, they're in this great nap schedule and you can get some work done. And then other times, like the babies are sick. So yesterday for the last 2 days, we had our son home and he was sick and hence now I'm sick. But then it's just seasons. And I think during that time, the best part is to just not beat yourself up too much because you can get so hard on yourself of like, I should have done more. I should have done that. And then when you do get time to actually work, you're feeling guilty about the times you didn't work. And now
Right.
you're wasting the good time. So just be like, okay, I'm doing my best. When I get 15 minutes again, I'm going to try my best and then just move forward.
Yeah. I find it really interesting that you were like, I carved out some of my personal time and the difference between that and self-care. Like for me, a lot of the working on my business was part of my self-care. I think as a new mom, and you kind of mentioned that you felt like when you became a stay-at-home mom that you lost a little bit of yourself because you have this whole identity. Right. I mean, you were working with Fortune 100 companies, very successful in your field. And then you're just like, and now I'm wiping butts.
Yes.
I'm super grateful for the opportunity. And I don't want to seem like I'm not grateful for the opportunity, but I'm wiping butts.
Yes.
So there is this element of and so I don't know if it was similar for you, but I definitely feel like, especially in those beginning years, that it was my outlet. It was my mental health that needed something to grow. Now, I do have a question. So you mentioned your goal pretty quickly, it sounds like, became to bring your husband home and to have him working at home as well. At what point in your journey did you set your sights on that? Because I mean, I can't imagine that you thought that was possible at the very beginning. No. So at what point was it oh, this could really happen?
Golly. So, but first of all, yes, you're right. That time to work on my business was, and sometimes health, mental health care for me, because I'm oh, I'm doing something for me. This is me. This is my outlet. I'm talking to other grownups online. I'm writing something. This is ooh, I can just sit here in front of my computer and drink a cup of coffee. It was definitely a good time too. When did it become a goal for me to bring John home? So initially my first goal was just to bring a little side cash in, right? Just so that I can go to Target, or actually it was Whole Foods, which Whole Foods is just whole paycheck. That's what people say.
Yeah.
I just want to go to Whole Foods because it smells so nice and walk in there and buy the fresh organic strawberries. So that was initially. And then after the blog started making $1,000, $2,000 per month, I'm like, ooh, this is more than just grocery money. Then it was to pay off the mortgage. Because I come from a family of debt is horrible. You never want to have debt. My parents instilled this in my mind, you do not want to have debt. And I'm like, the last debt we had was our mortgage. I'm like, okay, let's tackle this mountain of money that we need to go to the bank and pay off. So then it was to cover the mortgage payment each month. And that was, I think, around like 1,200 or something per month. And then after the blog started making like 7,000, I'm like, per month, I'm like, ooh, now I can pay the mortgage off.
Yeah.
And then once the blog was outperforming John at his job, and the first month it made 17,000 per month, I'm like, I can retire John. He can come home and we can work on this. Because now he was making this much and the blog was making a little bit more. I'm like, well, why don't we just put more effort into this one? And then we can both work from home and this would be just fantastic. And little did I know that John working on Startup Mom blog would not be his passion, you know.
But he was, I mean, so in that transition period when you both were like, hey, this could bring you home from work, was he working like nights with you? Because I know he's got a lot of technical skills as well. So were you guys like hustling at night together? That's so cool.
Poor thing. So he would wake up at 5, go to his job, be there at 6 to 5. And then during his lunchtime, he would try to work on our business because he would do the technical backend stuff, make sure the websites are updated. If there's anything going wrong, he would tackle that, all the taxes, anything accounting, like all the backend stuff. And I would be the front face and doing the content and the emails. So there's a whole section that like you don't see of running a business that you think is just like, oh, hi, we're just here in front, and like writing blog posts. There's a lot in the backend that goes on. So he would be sick all the time, because he would barely be sleeping. And at night, because he would come home late, then he would spend time with the kids. And then I want to spend some time with him. So then we would watch TV, which we shouldn't, or we would work super late. And then we would go to bed at 11 and he's up again at 5. So it was a pretty rough time. So the decision to then either let me back down on the blog and like have it just be a hobby blog again, or have him come home was a hard decision, because he's like, do I continue this steady income that we have from the corporate job that he has? Or does he come home and like this could potentially grow into something much bigger?
So what was the nail in the coffin that made you guys decide, let's do this?
I don't really like to say this, but he said it before on a podcast. So, okay, if he said it before, I'm going to do it. It was actually me giving him an ultimatum.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like we were standing in the kitchen and I was all in tears. And at that time we had 3 kids. And I'm like, sweetie, the blog is doing really well. It was like making 50 or 40,000 per month. And I'm like, sweetie, I cannot do this anymore. This is really hard to do with the 3 kids and to run the business. Like it's at a point now where it could support our family pretty well, because we're very risk averse. So most people would quit right like way before then, but we are a very risk averse person. Again, the whole like no debt in your life mentality. So I told him like, either you come home or I'm not going to do this blogging thing anymore, because this is just too much. Then I'm just going to I need you to help me with this. So that was like October-ish. And then that December, he gave in his notice. And then that January 2019 was the first time like we were like both, okay, we're tackling this thing. This is our baby, our 4th baby.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Your 4th, exactly. So so tell me about the kid dynamic, because you continued having children, right? You had 3 little ones, and obviously with more kids causes more of the, okay, there's more kids homesick. There's more this where, when they're younger, were they at home with you the whole time, or did you like use childcare at all?
The oldest went to preschool like twice a week for like short time. So she was in preschool for like 3 or 4 hours twice a week. So that's how we started. Okay. So oldest started going to preschool. Then in the other days, I would use the YMCA. So that was like my lifeline. The YMCA offered 2 hours of kid care with a monthly membership. For $90, you get 2 hours of kid care every day. So that was phenomenal. So I would jog a little bit or work out. And then the other time I would spend answering emails. And then I would pick up the kids again. So that's how it started. Then when we got 3 kids, we got a stay-at-home nanny to help us. And then the 2 older ones were in preschool and she was helping with the little one at home.
Yeah.
So it would be me and the nanny and the baby. It was a lot. It was a lot of people in the house. It was really busy. It was super, super thankful to having nannies and having people that can help you, but it changes the dynamic of the house a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Then later on, they were all in preschool. and starting kindergarten. So that now we're slowly shifting up. And then during COVID, one was in preschool, one had a nanny, and one I was homeschooling. So that was a whole mess.
Oh yeah, that was just everybody
That was
like trying to survive.
Yes, like we had no idea what was going
Oh my
on. We're
gosh.
like, we're getting the nanny and we're going to homeschool, but one's going to go to school. It was a whole heck of a mess, and we were moving. So that was
I
that
know.
was fun here.
I think we all just call it the dark ages. We're like, let's
Yeah,
just not talk about it. Let's just
like we're all just trying to survive during the
Yeah.
heavy COVID years. And then now after that, this year is the first year that they're all in school full time.
Does it feel
So-
like, heaven's opened up?
It feels so different. I actually miss them.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
now I'm like, homeschooling again.
Really? Are you considering homeschooling?
In time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So you give John this ultimatum. You say,
Yeah.
it's time. You come to work with me or we're cutting it off. It's not
Yeah.
happening anymore.
Yeah.
When he comes to work for the business. So at this point, did you have any other team members? Is it just you two? Because I mean, on your website, you have a bunch of people that work for you now.
Yeah.
Has that grown over time or did you have team members at that point?
So at that point, I had a VA. So I had somebody to help me with some emails in the inbox so that I can work on content creation and product creation. So she would help with the inbox. And then John came home and retired or semi-retired from his corporate job. But he actually bought a website.
Oh, wow.
So the initial goal, and it still is, like he has his own brand. I have my own brand, and we combine with our products and forces. So he came home and didn't 100% work on Start a Mom blog. He worked on, at that time, Income Mesh, and it now has been rebranded to Unbeatable Tech. But he bought a dilapidated website to convert it over and put life into it. So then we had 2 brands and then 3 kids, and we moved again. So we've been constantly moving. I think we're finally settled. We're not moving again. So yeah, it was the first year that John came home. So for anybody who's listening and like, oh, I want to retire my husband, this would be amazing. Take into consideration, like he's coming from his corporate life. That was his life for the last 5 years, like building up and working up the corporate ladder. And then coming home, just like that first year was hard for me with having a baby and stopping my corporate career. It was pretty hard for him too.
Yeah.
Even though the business was doing well, like, and we were financially fine, him emotionally, it was tough to go from, hey, I'm a manager of this cool like corporation, and now I'm home working with my wife.
Yeah.
So there is a dynamic that first year of just adjusting again of how you guys work as a team.
That's really interesting. I don't know if I've looked at it at that perspective before, because we had a similar when Rob came home to work for me in the business. He loves it now. Like, and not that he didn't love it then, but he's like, whenever people ask him, oh, what do you do? Because they always ask him first, right?
Yeah.
When we go places, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I work for her. And then people are like, oh,
I guess.
And he loves it. Exactly. He gets like this big smile on his face when he talks about it. But I think it was like in the very beginning. Now ours was kind of paired with he had gotten fired. And then there was like this season where it was like, oh, I don't know. And then the business really started taking off during that season. So it was just like, this actually makes sense for you just to work for me if you want. And but I think there was just, I wonder when, like, we need to talk to more women who have like brought their husbands in to work for their business. But I wonder if it's common to have kind of that identity shift issue, just like we did when we left. This is like who we are. And we had put so much of our identity into corporate world or whatever, just our life before. BW, be work from home. and then like transitioning to, okay, now I work from home. I work for my wife, and like, I don't even have to shower in the morning. Like I don't have to anything. And there's a big shift that happens. And I don't know if I've ever compared it like that to the shifts when having like your first kid. And it's just like, and now this is who I am and what I do.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's probably more common than we realize.
Yeah.
So,
I think it took him forever to like update his voicemail.
Yeah.
It still said like, hey, it's John from SET Toyota. How can I help you? Or like leave a voice message. And like it took him months to like, okay, hey, I'm just John. Leave a message.
So what would you give? Is there any advice that you would give to maybe somebody who's considering that transition or a couple that's considering that transition? Any advice that was helpful for you guys navigating that?
It's hard for me to speak from his perspective. I think he would have to like give his perspective. But for me as a wife, I think sometimes, and even with our kids too, we have like expectations here, right? And we're like, oh, he's going to come home and we're going to hit the ground running. And it's going to be like this locomotive and we're just going to boom forward. And I think we just have to like adjust those expectations of like, okay, there's going to be a transition period. Let's go slow. Let's like warm up to this and kind of find our groove again, because it changes again the house dynamics. Like even with having a nanny over, having grandparents over, having another person in the house changes the dynamic. So John coming home was like, okay, now who does the laundry? Who does the like
Yeah.
dishes? It's like, okay. So what helped me, well, what I wish I could have told myself back then was like, just have like not lower expectations, but just have realistic expectations.
Yeah.
Like don't expect him to be where I am now that I've been in it for 3 years. So that make him feel valued, because he's like, what do I do now? And then lastly, have clear, and I heard this from my boss in corporate. He super successful. He still works for GE, has like 4 or 5 kids. Awesome, awesome boss. One of my best ones I had. But he told me the advice that him and his wife has was like they have dedicated responsibilities at home. And it's clear, like you do that and I do this, and we don't overstep each other's bounds. So John does the kitchen. He cleans the kitchen and he cooks most of the foods. I do dinner, but he does lunches and breakfast and he cleans the kitchen. So I'm not there bossing him about like how to pack the dishwasher. I do the laundry and I clean the house. He doesn't boss me around about the laundry or where to pack his socks or whatnot. So having clear roles and responsibilities in the house does really help a lot.
And then I'm assuming you guys it kind of naturally fell that way in the business, right? Where it was like, oh, here's the things you're good at and here's what I'm good at. So same with the
Kinda
business.
naturally.
You kind of have
Kind of.
Did you have to have some discussions on here's what you do and here's what I do?
Yes. And like for him, he also felt like he's not the front face of Start a Mom blog. It's me. 'Cause
Obviously.
me and the kids. Yeah.
It'd be a little weird.
So he's like, how do I feel valued? So like making sure like we charted out everything that a business does, right? All the different segments, marketing, customer service, accounting, R&D. And it's like, okay, you do all this. You do this entire branch. I do this entire branch. And here's where our team comes in. So doing that in the business deliberately was also helpful.
Yeah, we've had to have one of my friends said that they, in their marriage, as far as the home part of things, said that they give each other like titles. It's like, you are manager of the dishes and
Oh,
you
I love that.
are the manager of the laundry and all the things. And it really does help, because then it's like, I joke with my husband when we first had our daughter, it was a few months in, and he was like, you go out and then I'll babysit. And I'm like, it's not babysitting when it's your own kid, But it was just this, like, I took care of her full time. So it was like, well, no. I mean, I'm like, I get what you're saying, but don't ever say it again. But I do think that there is this element of like, here, let me help you with this. And it's like, well, I don't know. That used to like rub me wrong. But after we've been married, we're coming on 10 years this year.
Me too. Yeah.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you.
I feel like over time, you do start to find like, okay, here are the things that it's like, I don't do anything with the car. So even if I even like fill up the gas tank, it's like, hey, I helped you by filling up the gas tank, Yeah. And he doesn't, like, my husband doesn't cook like at all. So if he's going to cook something, then it's like, hey, I'm going to help out with dinner tonight. And it doesn't feel as like offensive of this is both our responsibilities. Right. There really are things that like you're better at and I'm better at. And so let's just kind of divide and conquer. And then we can occasionally help each other with those things. But although I'm not allowed to touch the laundry at all.
Cool. Okay. So you guys are opposite.
Oh yeah. Like he's like the detail person and I'm the big picture. So I can clean up the house real quick.
Yeah.
And make it look really good. But then like doing dishes, he'll be like, why are these still so dirty? I'm like, sorry, no attention to detail.
They're somewhat clean.
They're kind of clean. Yeah. I'm terrible at that. So, okay. So you mentioned the other day that you were in kind of a season, and you kind of alluded to it here, where you're like, I miss my kids. Like now that they're off to school, they've been home so much. And so you're kind of entering into this place where it sounds like your business is just largely self-sustaining. Not that you don't do a ton still, but that you've got systems in place. You're already a systems-minded person. You've got systems, you've got people, you've got your husband helping with things, and that you're kind of looking at, man, how do I kind of incorporate more kid time back into my life? So tell me about kind of that decision. And I don't know, is that something that like has that toggled back and forth over time? Like, oh, I need more business time. Oh, I need more kid time. I need more. Or it like, how does that work out in your brain?
That is such a good question. And like what you said, like toggling back and forth, that is so true. So for during the COVID years, I'm just gonna like from 2020 to
Yeah.
like the beginning of this year,
Yeah.
because
The
I
dark
find
ages.
the dark
I'm just
ages.
kidding.
We were like almost every night. It's like, what's our 5-year plan? What are we doing? What are we doing with our life? Like, we have our beautiful kids. Are we going to ramp up the business and like increase our lifestyle, or are we going to sell everything and go RVing? Like, it was back and forth, back and forth. And it is so hard to like go through and not really have a direction. So, as you and your couple and you and your husband, make sure you have a goal. Like, what are you working towards? Like, otherwise, it feels like you're just kind of floundering around and
Yeah.
you don't really have a purpose to why am I sitting in front of my computer every day, or why am I writing this blog post if I have no big purpose? So we finally discovered our purpose. So that's really good. Finally decided, okay, what are we doing? And then from there, everything.
Wait. What is it?
What
Can you
is
tell me?
it?
Like, what's the big goal?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we went between back and forth of like the RVing, selling everything, and living off what we have, or growing. So we switched to growing, and we got the big house and the really fun, all the fun toys for the kids. Cause we're in this phase for a little bit, having kids at home.
Mhm.
So we're going to go all out and do
Do
this
it.
and get the house with the
Yeah.
pool and all that. So we're there now. But now that we're here, we're like, okay, we could do this. Oh man, where am I going with this?
The big goal.
The big goal. So this is our big goal, to have our kids just have this amazing life that
Mhm.
when they're going through a couple years of school, that they're going to be in school. So that, wait a second, my end is coming. That this is going to be the house where they want to hang out, because I want to be involved in my kids' lives. I want to know what friends they have with all the crazy stuff that goes on outside. I want to be as involved as possible to have a continuous, long, good relationship with these awesome little people, because now they're super fun. Like, my girls are super fun. We play clay together. We do stuff together. My son's getting at a fun age. We went to Lowe's yesterday and he's my little buddy. So we're over that baby phase and we're in this little fun little people phase. And I'm just loving it. So when
Yeah.
they come home, I don't want to work. I don't want to think about work. On the weekends, I don't want to work. So while they're in school, we try to hustle as hard as we can for the 6 hours we have. And then before school, after school, it's no work. Like, not even late at night. We go to bed so that we can be refreshed for the next day. It's not like late night working anymore. So trying to find time for your side hustle, or then once it becomes your full hustle, it changes every season. So when I was with babies, it was during little sporadic nap times. Then it was during their preschool time, and now it's during their school time. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I don't have my kids in school, I don't have time, it changes. Like, every month it can change, because your kid's nap schedule can change. Okay. So now we're in the phase where the kids are in school and we can hustle. So our plan is to hustle for a couple more years. And we love it. Like, now we have a goal to get all our debt paid off again. And because that's like the mountain that I always want to
Yeah.
conquer. Like, we get debt and I just want to pay it off. And then by the time before they go to middle school, I would love to bring them back and homeschool them, because those are the awkward years. I would love for them to, like, at that time, like, be home and we could do stuff. And the biggest goal. Okay, so here's the big goal.
Yeah.
So we've built like our freedom business. We've built Start a Mom Blog, Unbeatable Tech, like Blog by Number, Printables by Number, and then Freedom by Number. Eventually came the book that John wrote. And that's our like combined brand of like starting a business that gives you freedom. So in 3 years, we'll be completely debt free again. By that time, the kids can come home, and then we want to help them build their freedom businesses. So by the
Yeah.
time that they're like 16, 17, they have a full-time income from home that they're already doing. So they don't even have to go to college and go party and do all that stuff. Like, they will have all the skills. They'll have whatever they're doing, because we can teach them all these amazing skills that they can do online. And our goal is for them, by the time that they're 17, 18, they have full-time incomes, their own little businesses, and then they can decide what they want to do. If they want to go to college, that's fantastic, but they wouldn't need to do that or go into life with a financial burden.
Oh my gosh, so cool. You coming from the entrepreneurial background and being like, having your family do that, you seeing that and saying, "Hey, I want to put that into my kids
Yeah.
too." That is
Yeah.
that is so cool. What an amazing goal. I think this has been so good. It's just been fun honestly, personally, for me to hear your story and
Oh,
to
thanks.
just to see so many commonalities. I mean, some of the things we talked about bringing your husband home and some of the challenges with that, about scaling and balancing kids. I think this has just been, if anybody's been listening to this, I think there's sometimes just when you hear somebody else that has done it and been in the middle of the mess of being like, oh, I feel like I I have to wake up at 5 a.m. to work on my business. That's all I have.
Right.
But now getting to this point where it's like, oh, the different seasons, and you did it. I mean, you grew to those 50K plus months in those little bits of time. And
Yeah.
I think the biggest like overarching theme I see in you is just like get a goal and just slowly chip
Slowly.
away at it. You
Baby
see all these
steps.
like overnight success stories. It's like
Yeah.
what gets advertised is just, like, oh, I launched a 6-figure business, a 7-figure business in 2 months. And it's like, I mean, how long have you been doing this, Suzi?
7, 8 years.
Like 8 years, almost
Yeah.
8 years. And your business is massive. I mean, you can tell us how big your business is if you want, but it's you've got this big, amazing business. And it's just because you just showed up and you were consistent
Right.
and you stayed focused on the goal. And I think that is just incredibly inspiring.
Right. And like that's so true. You have to celebrate those small successes, those small baby steps. Like the main business is now making good money. But then I started this little like side hustle, this little shop, and it made like $2. And I'm like, yes, I made a sale. And then like yesterday it made $4. I'm like, yes. And the kids are like, why are you so happy about that? And John's like, why are you so happy about your little sales? I'm like, because it's something new and it's like baby steps and this can grow again. Like I see it as like a little seed and like all the little things that you start can just like grow big again. So I see that small steps, small little goals that can turn into something much greater.
So good. Best advice you've been given along this journey?
Oh man, it's so cliche, but it
or
is
maybe,
all. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say best advice or the biggest lesson you've learned, but it sounds like you've got advice. So go for it.
Yeah, I have advice.
Okay.
It's cliche, but it is so important to have a good mindset. It's like to be stubbornly positive, like, because there are so many instances where you can just be negative. Well, somebody else is better, or my blog post is not getting any views, or I did something and nobody signed up. It is so easy to focus on the negatives and feel the victim mentality. And I get into those every now and then. And then it's the whole day of just crying and I don't feel good enough. And then John helps and picks me up again. So it's amazing to have a fantastic supportive spouse, but it is so mindset. Like you can go into the same day with this positive mindset of like, I can do this and the same things happen. Or you can go into the day with like this negative mindset and the same things happen and you end up like, oh, it just wasn't good enough. Or you can celebrate those 2 comments you got or that 1 subscriber you got.
So good.
It's a little
Suzi, thank you.
Thank
This has
you,
been
Abby.
really fun. And
Oh,
I really
you're
appreciate
awesome.
you.
Oh, I appreciate you too.
Where can people find out about you if they want to find out about you and John's businesses?
Yay. Okay, so if you are a mama and you want to start your blog, you can go to startamomblog.com. And if you're more interested in what John and I do and how we've created our freedom business to literally just now have an awesome, amazing life, go to freedombynumber.com.
Awesome. Everybody go check it out. Suzi, thank you so much again.
Thanks, Abby.